Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Global Biceps Weekend 2021, powered by D665 Champs. It's day one today, and we hope you are doing well and keeping safe. I'm Sagar Rupani, moderating this session along with the Venkata Subbarao Polisetti. This session is presented by Daniel Christian and Reza Dorrani. They will be talking about deep integration of Power Platform with the SharePoint. If I talk about the Daniel Christian, he is Microsoft MVP and has over 15 years of information technology experience in a wide variety of companies, which includes small businesses to global level enterprise companies. He has worked with the industrial, financial, and healthcare companies. And Reza Dorrani, yes, he is also Microsoft MVP, also is an MCT, and he is working as a principal consultant at Catapult System. He is an international speaker, trainer, Houston Power Platform User Group leader, Microsoft Flow All-Star awardee, also Power Apps and Power Automate community dual super user. Before I hand over the session to them, I would like to mention that if you have any query, please feel free to drop it into chat window. We will take them either during the session if possible or during the QA time. Thank you again for joining and enjoy your session. Daniel and Reza, over to you.
Awesome. Thank you for that introduction. We will do our best to keep up our reputation.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump in. The premise of today's session is all about Power Platform's deep integration with SharePoint. So we're going to look at it from various angles, but the main focus will be SharePoint. And as it was mentioned, that's Reza Dorrani and myself, Daniel Christian. That's our Twitter handles. The Twitter handles were here. We also have an R&D show, which will pick up, beginning of next year. So before we jump into SharePoint and talk about the new stuff, one of the things I like to do is see the history of SharePoint. And SharePoint has been there for a while, over 20 years. And I remember when I first got into the SharePoint premise, my first SharePoint was not even a SharePoint server. It was actually a SharePoint portal, right around this time. And so it has grown so much. And that's one of the neat things that I like about SharePoint. But now when we are talking from a Power Platform perspective, the main ones that we want to talk about are web forms, apps, workflows, even building reports server integration. So this is a great example that I like to see how the whole consolidation in the cloud has happened. From an on-premise to a Microsoft 365 cloud. This is all the stuff, right? From forms, you have these basic different integration and iteration of forms that we've had, from the basic list form in SharePoint Designer, info path forms, dynamic forms, DFFS form system integrations and styles, all these connections, all these reporting pieces. And so when we take a look at them and see, okay, this is the transition over to the cloud, you can see, right, that the forms and data connections, all of these, which also talks about flows, they can easily transition over to Power Apps. All these reporting services that you have or currently are using, whether it be on-prem or on the cloud, you can transition over to Power BI. And for all of you who are at the level of coding, you can go and do all of this stuff over with these other Microsoft services, all these coding languages. You can switch over to my Azure Services, Microsoft Graph, SharePoint Framework. So the transition is there. It's all available. You just need to know where you go ahead and put in all these pieces to get what you want. Now, our focus over here is going to be on Power Platform. And this is the Power Platform family. From anywhere from Power BI, we call it as the big brother. It was one of the first Power Platform family members to arrive. Then came Power Apps and Power Automate. And then the new kid on the block was Power Virtual Agents. And all of these, when you pop the hood, you'll be able to see all these connectors. But if you really want to take a microscopic view inside the hood, this is what it looks like, from the Power Platform, all the way from heavy developers on the left side to low-code people, such as myself. All of this magic is happening inside the hood. So all said and done, what is Power Platform and how do we have a deep integration with Power Platform, specifically with SharePoint? As you can see, SharePoint is the main focus, but everywhere else there's integration going on. So let's look at each of these step by step. As you all know, Reza and I are very demo heavy, so we're going to show you a little bit about some slides, jump in, do some demo, some slides, jump in, do some demo, and that's basically going to be the whole thing. And we'll keep it fun and exciting. So let's jump in straight into Power Apps. Power App is act. It's an acting situation where you go ahead and build an app or a form, and you're able to go ahead and do an action. Now, we always look at it from two different perspectives, because remember, the premise of today is all about SharePoint. The SharePoint has customized forms. So when we talk about customized forms, there's different scenarios. One of them is it is built directly inside a SharePoint list, and Reza is going to do some demos on that. But when you talk about SharePoint lists, it gives you the ability to directly still use the Power Apps Canvas Studio. But there are some limitations over there. Limitations such as you can't save the list into as you would do as an app. You can't save the form. So kind of keep that in mind when you're working on it. Also, when it comes to things such as what is the use of the customized form, it's very good for editing, showing whatever you're editing or whatever you're viewing the form can be at a user level permission. You only see this set of controls of the form based on what your user are. Well, the point I'm trying to make is that when you're using a customized form with a SharePoint list, you want to use it as a form. You don't want to use it as a full holistic app. I mean, there are some scenarios where, yeah, in your SharePoint form as well, you want to have some galleries to present a very limited amount of data, but it would kind of defeat the purpose of a SharePoint customized form to already have a powerful list view. Top of the list, you've got the search functionality. The list itself has filtering capabilities, and then you're kind of replicating all of that in a customized form. It defeats the purpose, and it will give you some performance hindrances also in the customized form. So the customized form, as the name states, use it as a customized form. That is the full primary reason for that. However, if you are the person who wants to say, I think SharePoint is great out of the box, but I want to put my own wow factor to it, well, then switch into the Power Apps Canvas app, because it is a full standalone app which can also be embedded into SharePoint. And it gives you the full functionality of the full Canvas app Studio, Power Apps Canvas Studio. And just to give you one quick example, with the Canvas App Studio, you can go into the file, you can do save as, you can do a lot of information checking and updating in properties, which you don't get that functionality into the SharePoint customized list form. So if this is the first time you're understanding this is great. Just know your big takeaway from these two slides is that SharePoint customized form does give you Power Apps Canvas Studio, but a very lightweight version of it, while the Canvas Studio gives you the full fidelity, full permission on that. Another great thing about customized Canvas form, or even this Power Apps Studio, is that SharePoint permissions directly apply over here. So for example, if you've gone ahead and gone to the SharePoint list, advanced settings, and over there you're going and saying that, hey, I just want to make sure that everybody has view permission, but they're only able to see what their items are. Well, those permissions directly apply inside Power Apps Canvas. Don't believe me? Go test it. Keep a simple SharePoint list. Multiple people have made entries. Open up the app. Make that advanced list settings I just talked about. Open up the app, and then users will only see what their items are in a gallery or table, because the SharePoint permissions apply over there. But I just want to give you an overview of what the act is. But now is the fun part. So let's go and do some demos. And Reza is going to take it from here. He's going to talk about a few things. Everything I just showed in those two slides, he's going to demo that, the power of SharePoint, of Power Platform integration, specifically Power Apps inside SharePoint. Take it away, Reza.
Thank you, Dan. I'll go ahead and share my screen. I'll need a confirmation that my screen is visible.
Yes.
You can see my screen? All right, perfect. So I have a modern SharePoint list. It's called the issue tracker list. And the way I built this list was pretty simple. New list. I picked an existing Microsoft list template, and I went ahead and created a very simple issue tracking list to track issues that users are reporting. Now, when you create a list, a modern list or library in SharePoint, the default form experience that launches is the SharePoint form experience. And this, historically, we used to customize using InfoPath. Now, if you need to customize these list forms, in modern SharePoint, we have multiple options. Now, our topic for today is around Power Apps. However, it's important to note that even in modern SharePoint itself, using simple JSON code, you can customize your list forms. Now, this is known as configure layout. If you select configure layout, you can define the header of this form. You can group controls or columns of this form using the body aspect, or you can design a footer for the form. So you have that basic level of form layout customization available in SharePoint. However, if you want to take it one step further, wherein you need to perform additional activities like truly brand this form or build scenarios like cascading dropdowns or bring in data from a different data source or create a more complicated forms experience with rules and validations and other stuff. In those scenarios, you would look for a more customized approach, which typically we used to go to InfoPath. InfoPath is under extended support, so InfoPath is not recommended to be used going forward. Microsoft is not making any investments in InfoPath. It's not mobile ready, and so on and so forth. So the successor for InfoPath is Power Apps. And the way you can create Power Apps or customize these list forms using Power Apps is you head over to Integrate, and this is where the entire Power Platform experience is brought into SharePoint. One of the options here is Power Apps. And here you can create two kinds of apps. One says create an app and one says customize form. When you create an app, you are creating a standalone Power App that has a connection with the SharePoint list. The advantage of that standalone Power App experience is I can directly launch it from the Power Apps mobile app on my mobile devices. Of course, I get a lot more flexibility in what I can do there. However, there's also another option called Customize Forms. I'm going to go ahead and select this. With Customize Forms, you are customizing only the forms experience for that specific SharePoint list or library experience. That means this Power App customization is only related to that list, and it will only and only light up inside the context of SharePoint. Very similar to InfoPath. When I used to customize my InfoPath form, I had to go to the SharePoint list or library, open my forms experience, and that would light up with InfoPath. So here, the moment I created or clicked on customize form, it has opened up the Power Apps Studio experience in which you get this special object called SharePoint Integration. This gives you some additional details about the integrated list or library. In my scenario here, I have a form control, the data source for which is directly connected in my app, which is issue tracker. That was my SharePoint list. However, this SharePoint integration object gives you additional details. Details like which item was selected in the SharePoint list. So for the form control, if I head over to the item property, you will observe how this specific object is being utilized to showcase the selected item in that SharePoint specific list. So that's how it kind of interrelates to that specific list or library. Now here I have a form control that I can of course customize. So I can add additional fields from my SharePoint list right here in the Power Apps form. For example, show the date reported, show the title of the issue, show the issue description, maybe show some additional pieces of information like priority status. I'll click done. I'll keep it extremely simple for this demo. This is Power Apps. You have full power of the canvas experience. So if I want to change the theme of my app to, for example, a dark blue theme, on click of a button, I can simply go ahead and do that. I can connect to other data sources. I can extend this further. I'll show you in my next demo. For this specific use case, I'll keep it simple. Once I'm done with my customizations, I'll go ahead and click save. And I will publish this to SharePoint. Bear in mind, this is different from what kind of apps we build in make.powerapps.com. These are those standalone apps. The app that I customized using the SharePoint list form will not be available here. It will only be available when I go to that specific SharePoint list. Now that I created that customization, if I try and launch a new form experience, once my cache is cleared, on the right-hand side panel, it flies out and it opens up that SharePoint customized form experience in Power Apps. So users can interact with the list and now leverage the form, which is customized in Power Apps. If I select an existing item, it will show me the existing record data. I can edit this on the fly. Let's change the issue description to ID card for today, whatever. I'll click save. You'll see the description column being updated on the fly. Now, this panel that opens up on the right-hand side experience, there are scenarios wherein you want the form to provide you more real estate to play with. To set or to do that, all you have to do is go to settings, display, and change the orientation of the form. That's all you got to do. The moment you do that, it gives you a lot more real estate to play with. Of course, any changes you make, you have to save and you have to publish back to SharePoint. This has the full Power Apps experience. If you need versions and reverting back to a previous version, all those options are available for you. And if you would like to switch back to the original SharePoint form as well, you can even do that by heading to list or library settings, going to form settings. And right here, you have the ability to switch back to the default SharePoint form, use the existing Power Apps experience that you've customized, and something that you should not be using, which is creating that form experience in Power Apps. Some caveats that I will highlight after my next demo about this experience. Here, I have another SharePoint list called Content Scheduler. I want to show you a couple of demos of what you could truly do with this customization experience. Now, when I click on New, it launches this Power App. Now here I've gone ahead and added additional levels of customizations. For example, I have made this a multi-form or multi-part or a tabbed form experience, wherein the user goes through the process of filling out the form in a tabbed manner. So they fill out the first form, they head over to the second part of the form, which is entering the details about that content, then providing the link for the content, and then they have this final confirmation screen of what they see, and they can go ahead and submit. I've also given a feature like save as draft, wherein the status stays in draft until the user is ready to submit. And if I open an existing item and let's say edit this, we can see it in action right here. It's the title, here's the content type associated with this. It clearly tells me I have unsaved changes. So if I make a change, it tells me where the change is. These kind of small nuances are not possible with the standard SharePoint JSON form based customization, but with Power Apps, you can take your forms experience to the next level. And not just SharePoint lists. Why leave aside SharePoint document libraries? Here, I have a SharePoint document library. I'll go ahead and try and upload a document right here. Just trying to get a nice file so I can upload right here. Let me pick one of my presentations around model-driven apps. So I have gone ahead and uploaded a document inside this document library. This is using some of the JSON-based list view formatting experiences. So once I have my documents in, here's my document. I have this icon here that says open up the form experience. If I select this, it launches the forms experience for me. Now here, I've done a lot of additional things. For example, I have the properties of that item. In the center, I have a map. For some reason, the Azure Map Service is down. But here I had a live map that showcases or plots the customer address on a map that I can visualize. I can see a preview of the document that the user has uploaded. And I've also gone ahead and added some related tasks associated with all these contract documents that are coming in. And I can view the tasks. I can change the status of the tasks, save this. And as I make these changes, the chart experience on the left-hand side gives me an overview of how many tasks in my checklist items are closed and how many are open. Now, a kind of experience like this, wherein I have properties, I have another list interconnected, I have maps, I have documents, these kind of experiences cannot be created in standard SharePoint forms, neither with InfoPath. So this really takes your SharePoint form customization game to the next level. And I think Power Apps is the way forward. Microsoft has invested in this, so go ahead, try this out. These forms though, these customized forms, you don't get it on the mobile app. If you go to SharePoint go to your list and launch it. The Power Apps team is working on it. As Dan mentioned earlier, the ALM story is weak for this. As of today, you cannot package this with the list or library and move it, but they announced this at Ignite that this feature is coming. And one final thing before I hand it over to Dan again, is all of these apps that you create, they are being saved somewhere. All of these get saved in the default environment of your Power Platform space. Whether you like it or not, it goes there. Now, can I find it by going to apps? No, but it's in that environment. You can use, I believe, the Center of Excellence toolkit to figure out where they are. However, if you would like to move it out of the default environment into another more managed or controlled environment, you can also do that through a simple PowerShell script that looks like this. Of course, only admins can do this. Get the default SharePoint environment, and then you can define the next command, which is set the default SharePoint environment to a specific environment name. This is the only command you need. And then any new apps that are customized using SharePoint forms will go in that new environment that you select. That was a part of my Power Apps demo. I'll hand it off back to Dan again for the presentation.
All right,
Dan, back to you.
There, check on that. All right, cool. Let's keep that momentum going. Thanks for those demos, Reza. I love it. The second demo is my favorite. Now, Reza showed one of those things I talked about where his app actually has that little gallery over there. That's the scenario where you want to put a gallery inside a SharePoint customized form, but it's a very specific situation. You don't want to do a heavy gallerying inside a SharePoint form because you already have the list over there. That's the scenario, so keep that in mind. All right, so let's switch gears now and talk about Power Automate. Well, Power Automate is now the successor of what we would call as SharePoint Designer workflows or any workflows over there. And you've got direct integration directly inside SharePoint, and Reza is going to show you some demos on that. The two things I want to point out is so you see this one on the right, that integrate option. That integrate is for all three members of the Power Platform family, Power Apps, and then our Power Automate, and also our Power BI. But you also have Automate. Automate is Power Automate running on the back end, but it's a very simple, pretty much just a one action, one notification type. If a rule that you want to set up, that's where you use Power Automate. And honestly, many a times that can solve 50% of your questions, because at the end of the day, you just want a simple rule applied to do that one thing. Well, don't go building a full Power Automate form. Leverage this. Just do a small POC and just say, okay, hey, that solved my problem. I don't need to go and do a full workflow. So that's a very simple and yet a very powerful way to go ahead and demo that piece. In addition, though, you also have, Power Automate has different flavors of going ahead and creating your flows. But these are the two big ones that we see a lot from a SharePoint perspective. The one on the left is called as Automated Cloud Flow. What that means is that when you go ahead and add a SharePoint item or edit a SharePoint item, modify it, those terms that we use, well, that will trigger your Power Automate flow. One on the right will also work to trigger your SharePoint related flows, but that is used on a scheduled basis. And it's a really powerful way to use that for those scenarios where you just want to run things once a day or every 12 hours. That's the type of scenario where you can go and schedule your flow. As the name says, schedule. So these are the two really common and highly used ones from a SharePoint perspective when it comes to Power Automate. The other important one is when you go ahead and start building these SharePoint flows, and Reza will demo that in a minute, you've got options to do what we call as an OData query to do a server-side filtering. Now, what does that mean, Daniel? Well, that means that you want to save the load on Power Automate and, in fact, put the load on SharePoint. For example, when you want to go ahead and make changes or calls to a bunch of items, not just one or two, but a bunch of items, but you don't want to get, for example, with this SharePoint list, let's say 10,000 items, you don't want to pull all those 10,000 items and then do an if condition inside Power Automate. That can put a lot of load in your workflow. What you want to do is you want to go ahead and say to Power Automate that, hey, you want to go and say to SharePoint and say, hey, I want you to send me only the items which go ahead and satisfy this filter query using this example where you go ahead and create say that as long as all your columns for say a status type column equals completed, send all of those items directly to Power Automate, and I will do my stuff in the Power Automate logic. This is a very important piece because this demonstrates a very important point, is that SharePoint is a delegable data source. Now, delegable is a very important term. It's just like when you're going and buying a house, it's always those three terms: location, location, location. When it comes to Power Automate, you need to know those three terms: delegation, delegation, delegation. And SharePoint is a delegable data source, which means that you can do a server-side, a service-side querying and not call all that load into Power Automate. So these are the very important terms that you want to remember from a SharePoint perspective in Power Automate. Now, Reza is going to actually go and show some really neat demos over there. So I'm going to hand that over to him, and that will actually explain everything I just talked about. So take it away, Reza.
Thank you, Dan. Go ahead and share my screen once again. Need a small confirmation from you, Dan. Thumbs up will work.
Yep, you're good.
All right, perfect. So next, let's talk about how we can bring in automation into the SharePoint experience. Now, in a modern SharePoint list or library, this might confuse you a little. On the top, there is an automate option. This is for setting something known as rules. For example, if I want to create a rule on this specific SharePoint list, this is a more SharePoint centric experience that has been created for us, which also leverages automate at the back end. But here I can get notified when a column changes, a column value changes, an item is created, an item is deleted. Very similar to the classic SharePoint alerts experience, very similar to that. So that's one option that we can leverage straight out, which is good for small scale scenarios. However, when you want to truly perform enterprise scale automations, bring in approvals, bring in additional data sources, and make this take this to the next level, you will have to go to integrate again. And this time we have the option for Power Automate. Now, Power Automate here is pretty straightforward. You either click on create a flow to create the flow. You can click on see your flows, which basically takes you to flow.microsoft.com. Once again, it launches this. You can see all your flows and start creating your flows. Or the third option is configure flows, wherein you can go and configure your specific flows. Now, when I click create a flow, you can directly, of course, begin in flow.microsoft.com and say, I want to create a new flow based on my scenario. But here I really like this experience because it launches a lot of it provides you a lot of templates that are baked in, that are provided to us for free that we can leverage. And there are many SharePoint centric templates here that could be very useful. I'll highly recommend you to use templates because I feel like you don't have to begin things from scratch. If you're looking out for an approval process, for example, there's a nice template here that says start the approval when a new item is added. If I select this, it will take me to the template experience for that specific list. It will ask me to connect to that SharePoint list, of course, and this template has other connectors that it deals with. One of them is the approvals action. I can click continue. Literally, it puts out the entire flow structure for me. I can use it as is, or I can customize it. That's the beauty of templates. Now, this template that I'm just showcasing here, I used the template as is. It took me 6 seconds to configure the template, and let me show you what it gives me. Here, I have a issue tracking list again, wherein users can report issues. And let's take this last issue right at the bottom. This was an issue that I created that, we are working on a project and, I reported an issue associated with it. Now I want the individual who's working on this to approve this. I made the fix and now I want someone to approve this. So I have this button here called start approval. Now this is using the SharePoint column formatting experience. There is a function in there that can launch a flow for you if the trigger of the flow is for a selected item. Now, what do we mean by for a selected item? That means user can select an item, go to automate right here on the top, and this will launch the flows that are connected to the SharePoint list. Here's one of them, request approval. If I select this, it will launch the flow panel on the right hand side, wherein I can ask additional questions to the user. Now, instead of giving this user experience of selecting an item, going to automate, 2-3 clicks, Rather than that, why not just give them the link right here? That is through column formatting. Now, if I select this, start approval, it will directly launch that same panel experience on the right-hand side. And all of this comes from that baked-in template, by the way. So you need an approval. What is the message you want to give to your approvers? Please review. I can even dynamically define my approvers here. Who are my approvers? Okay, I'm going to assign this to Reza himself. So because I'm demoing here, I'm sending the approval request to myself. Do you need approval reminders? I could have said yes or no. How frequently do you want to remind? So all of these components or controls are all baked into that template itself. If you try and recreate this kind of a flow, it's going to take you hours. But a template gets me there in a matter of seconds. So I created the flow using the template. I've launched the flow. I've started the flow. The flow now will get triggered. We'll read the details of this and start the approval process. Now, of course, I want to show you more custom scenarios, and we are short on time as well. So let me show you one common use case. This is around document approvals. Okay. Now, once again, this is SharePoint. I have customized this using SharePoint view formatting. Trust me, if you have not invested time in learning about list formatting, view formatting, column formatting, you are missing out on a lot of cool features. So here I have a document library. And to prove my point, I'll go to list. You see, this is a standard SharePoint document library. I've just created the styles experience. I'll go ahead and upload a document. So let's say I upload this specific document. And the moment I upload a document into the system, the status of this document goes to new, right? It's a newly created document. And in the back end, I have a document review workflow. And this I have built leveraging Power Automate. Here, the flow triggers when a file is created in that document review library. Once it does that, I have my list of approvers that I'm bringing in dynamically from my SharePoint group. So I have some code here inside flow, some actions to get the members of the SharePoint group. Then once before starting the approval process, I change the status of my document to pending. Now, if I go back to the document review and if I refresh this, once the flow starts, you will see the status change on the fly. The flow is still waiting. It takes up to 30 seconds, I believe, before it starts. Once it starts, I'm using the approval action. And then depending upon the response of the approvers, I have 3 approvers in this case. If the maximum approvers respond with yes, that this document is approved, the status goes to approved. Else, the status stays as rejected. So if you look at this approved and rejected document scenario, this got approved because 2 approvers, Reza and Sarah, said yes. Quorum style approval, majority wins approval. 2 people said yes, so it's yes. In this case, 2 people said no, hence the document got rejected. So that's the scenario here. Now, in case of the document that I uploaded, you see the status now on the fly changed to pending. And now it is waiting for a decision from 3 approvers, Reza, James, and Sarah. 3 of these users have to go and respond. So let me first look at how Reza sees this. Reza gets this approval action in Power Automate, wherein the question is asked to Reza, do you approve this or do you reject this? Right? Is this document correct? Yes or no? I can even give a link that takes the user directly to that specific document so they stay in context. Reza, at the same time as I'm talking, I'm also logging in as the other approvers and taking the decisions on the fly. I have taken a decision as yes, as James, and Sarah, I believe I took no. In my case now, I'll say yes. Reza says yes. I'll submit this. All of the approvers have taken their decision. The flow at the back end now calculates all the 3 responses. I actually took them all on the fly right now. The responses are calculated. They'll see how many have said yes, how many have said no. And then what it does is it does the calculation. And if I simply refresh this, you see, it changed to approved on the fly. In fact, I did not have to refresh. It would have even live connected it because SharePoint has that concept of socket IO, I believe. So the status is approved. Sarah said yes. Reza said yes. James said no. So a clear indicator to the user of the entire approval process. And all of this I'm tracking or mapping in columns. Here's my columns of approvers who said yes. Here's my column of approvers who said no. And why only SharePoint libraries? Why not SharePoint list experiences? So here I have a help desk list. Okay. Any task that gets created once again runs through that approval process. And here I have actually taken this one step forward, wherein using once again formatting, I'm even maintaining an entire timeline of my approval. So who started this approval process? Reza. Who took the approval decision as rejected? James. When did they take the decision? How long did they take to provide that decision? What were their commands? Okay, so the entire history of the approval is tracked or maintained in SharePoint. This is very important to do because Flow maintains your approval history only for 28 days. So bear that in mind. If you need a track for auditing purposes, this is something that you should be investing in. So these are the kind of experiences you can create with SharePoint features. And if you merge this with Power Automate, you can take your automation scenarios as well to the next level. And why just Flow or Power Apps? Why not use both? Check this out. In the help desk list, I have a Power App that lights up on the right hand side. I have a Power Automate that does the approval process when the issue is added. So I am mixing and merging both. And now Dan will show you two additional services that you can also mix with what I just showcased. So Dan, back to you.
Cool. Yeah, in this one, I really like the integration piece that Reza has done. And if you've noticed something that we just did, I don't know if you caught that, was when it came to Power Automate, we actually talked about using the Reza, I didn't get that, using the template piece.
Yeah.
We mentioned that for Power Automate. Did you notice that we didn't mention that for Power Apps? However, we don't want to say that it's Power Apps, don't use it, it's bad. Power Apps templates are a great place to do some reverse engineering and training and learning. In fact, that's one of the things that Reza and I do a lot is we take existing solutions and we do some reverse engineering to learn and figure that out. But in the templates that are available in Power Apps, what does tend to happen is that some of the, if you change your data sources, then some of the delegation rules change. With Power Automate, you can literally take the template and start using it. That's why Reza said use the templates in Power Automate. But just want to call that out. That's an important thing. It's kind of an important thing to mention. Anyway, our goal right now is we're going to switch gears and now talk about Power BI. But before I switch over to Power BI, this is an important announcement that was made at Ignite. And since we just finished Power Automate, I want to call this out. They announced that the migration tool for SharePoint on-prem to online, they're going to now provide the option to migrate workflows as well. It says migrate your workflows to Power Automate, which your on-prem workflows will go over to online as well. Now, when Reza and I talked about this in our R&D show, we said that we are very cautiously optimistic about this because what we don't know is right now, is it just going to do 2010 workflows, 2013 workflows? Either way, we are excited about this because at least they have a way to do it. Nobody else stepped up and said that they would do this. So this is something we're excited about. Thought I'll just, close that in passing. All right, so about Power BI. In Power BI, as we talked about the 3 integration options available for a SharePoint list, this is one of those options available to visualize the list. So let me just jump in straight into the demo and show you what that means. So I'm going to come now to a Power Apps app that I had built a long time ago. It's also one of my popular ones. I had demoed this, I think, at Ignite. It's a place where, for your internal company, you've got a cafeteria, you go ahead and have people put in an order over there. They go put in their first name, last name, put in a very simple, a request. If it's a hamburger, well, then what kind of bun that you want, all this jazz, which, you can go ahead and do it. Made it a little fun, just so it shows. But the data in the back end is a SharePoint list, all right? And there's a good amount of data over here. As you can see, I've got a meal order list. It's got close to 300,000 items. So it's holding a lot of data. But right now, it's presenting it this way. Now, I know you and I who've been using SharePoint for a while, we can go ahead and modify the list views. Reza just showed some demos too of how we can go ahead and add some nice UI and UX, user interface, user experience effects over there. But when you want to specifically look at it from a reporting standpoint, just use the out-of-the-box functionality, which is the integration. So I come to the integration, I go to Power BI, and right here, there is the option to visualize the list. Now, keep in mind that all I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that link And that is it. I didn't have to go ahead and I'm not doing any changing to the list views. I don't have to do any prerequisite steps to achieve a proper Power BI. So watch this. I have data. I've got 3,000 rows worth of data. I'm going to click on visualize this list. And the moment I do it, it is automatically going ahead and taking me to Power BI, massaging the data, going ahead and creating this report functionality out of the box. Now let's take a look at what it's providing, right? First of all, it's telling me, okay, of all the different items that you are providing, for example, the pizza, when people are ordering pizza, how many of them went ahead and picked this type of sauce? How many people picked barbecue? And so now from visualizing, right, something which we could not see in the list, I could not differentiate this, but now from visualizing, I know that, hey, in the past, whatever days, your barbecue sauce was the highest count. Same thing goes on the garlic knots, same thing for garlic breads. Now, this too doesn't make a lot of sense. Okay, count of last name by garlic knots. Garlic knots is not a user person. So when it comes to things which doesn't make sense to you, you've got full flexibility to go ahead and first change go ahead and select other column types that you want. Basically, you've been given full flexibility to go ahead and modify this report to your liking. However, the point I'm going to make here is that you've got the flexibility to get a report going right off the bat, and you can go ahead and make some changes to the views as well. Right now, in the whole sense, I can go ahead and say this is going to be just something to fit in the page, which is what we do. Go ahead and change it to a full screen mode, or you can even go and say, I want to change just the color interface. I want to go and put that as, make it as a high contrast. Some people love high contrast. I know a lot of Azure admins select the dark mode when they go to Azure admins. I know who you are, but they know who we are too. And they said, okay, people like this type of mode. Jokes aside, some of these are literally pleasing to your eye as well. The dark mode does help in your eyes. So there is a realistic reason to do all this. But the point being is you just build in a report. Hey, Reza built a Power Automate flow in I think he said 6 seconds. I built a Power BI report in 5, all right? But jokes aside, though, the point Reza and I are trying to make is that it doesn't take time, all right? It just doesn't. It's gone out of the days where you would sit for a week to make a Power Automate flow or a Power BI flow. We're doing it in seconds. And that's the beauty of it over here. Now, let's go ahead and switch gears. Let's keep the momentum going. And we want to jump over and now talk about a little bit about Power Virtual Agents. Now, we've always talked about Power Virtual Agents as the new kid on the block, because it was the last member of the Power Platform family. And, there is still full deep integration when it comes to SharePoint as well. So with SharePoint and Power Automate, you've got a few options. You can go ahead and embed that into a SharePoint site. You can go ahead and leverage also a SharePoint data source using Power, I said Power Automate. With the Power Virtual Agents, you can leverage SharePoint. But when you want to leverage SharePoint or any other data source as a whole, you can go ahead and use Power Automate. Now, I do want to call out that they are planning on making that a little easier, because when I say they, as in the Microsoft product group, because right now as we go, we are using Power Automate to do all this integration with other data sources. They are saying that, and they haven't put this in the roadmap yet, but they have said that they are planning on doing this directly inside Power Automate. For example, in Power Apps, when we go ahead and want to make changes to any data source like a SharePoint list using that edit form, you do it directly inside Power Apps Canvas app. You don't have to send data and then Power Automate does it. This is what they're trying to achieve in Power Virtual Agents as well, is to go ahead and instead of using Power Automate, make all the changes to your data source directly inside the PVA, which is Power Virtual Agents. Now, as far as presenting it into SharePoint, you can present that into a SharePoint site. There are widgets available. I'll just demo that in a minute. And then you can also go ahead and use heavy SharePoint framework to build in as a web part. The reason that SharePoint framework is a much next level is because it's the SharePoint framework. But what it does help you is that it helps you use a little bit more real estate value in the SharePoint page itself. So let me go ahead and now show you a demo on that. We'll actually jump in and talk a little bit about the fun items you can do with Power Virtual Agents inside SharePoint. So I'm going to now jump into a completely separate site. And here it is. This is my SharePoint site. And in my SharePoint site, I've got my SharePoint bot. The bot is being put directly inside SharePoint with the widget. There's actually, you can go to Power Virtual Agents, and I'll show you that, get the link, and I just embedded that into the link. So I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, this is the place where I want to go ahead and get some learning content. So I'm going to say show information, okay? Just a show information. And it says, hey, the bot is being very smart, and it's actually, you're just having a conversation with the bot. It says, hey, show information. Are you talking about like a learning content? Are you talking about what do you want me to show you, or is there a show? Well, now that the bot's come and giving you that suggestion, oh, well, actually, let me just see R&D learning content. So I'll say, okay, I'm going to click on R&D learning content. And it says, hi there, welcome to the R&D show chatbot. Both Reza and Daniel have, learning content for PVA. Which one in particular are you interested in? Well, I'm going to start with Reza. So I'm going to say, click on Reza. It takes just a few seconds, and then after that, it comes back with a whole bunch of information. And it's doing it pretty well. It's going ahead and giving me, a list of information. It's going ahead and providing me links. As I click on a link, it will actually go to the YouTube channel just right there. A pop-up comes up, so it's taking you to a new screen. But in addition, it's also smart enough saying anything else. Oh, yeah, now that you've shown me Reza's, might as well show me Daniel's as well. And it goes ahead and does its thing and provides me the same information. So what is this that's doing it? Like, what is it? Well, let's go take a look. First of all, this information is all coming from a SharePoint list. This is it. It's a very simple SharePoint list. I've got titles, and that the titles are the title is basically just the name of the the videos which are there. Who is the author? What is the content type? I've already started presenting the list and the data in the list, because Reza has a GitHub place where he goes ahead and puts in some information. Well, I might have to start putting that content type as well as video versus GitHub for demos, and then the links. Now, this is the data source, which is a SharePoint list. Now, we just go take a look at that chatbot as well. Well, in the chatbot, this is the learning content. So let's actually take a step back and talk about that. So in Power Virtual Agents as a whole, this is how all your work starts, right? And I'm showing this from a Power Virtual Agent standpoint, because once you see it and you're comfortable with it, the exact thing happens on Microsoft Teams as well. So right here in Power Virtual Agents, once you are in each of your environment, when you're in the environment, you start building bots. So your environment concept is the exact same that we learn about in Power Apps and Power Virtual Agents. In fact, the environments that you have in those two, Power Apps and Power Apps and Power Automate, are the exact same that you see over here, nothing different. But once you're in, you can go and start building your bots. In my case, I've got a SharePoint bot. So that's the one that I'm doing, SharePoint bot. Important thing to note is that when you have a bot created, that bot name will start showing up over here in the SharePoint bot. So kind of keep that in mind, because once you are in that bot, no matter how many different topics that you use, it will still in SharePoint only present the bot name. So keep that in mind. Now I'm going to go and start talking about different topics. Topics is exactly what it means. What is the topic of this bot conversation? So first of all, you want to start talking about building trigger topics. So remember, even though you're putting in, you're making the best estimated guess of what the phrases should be, the bot doesn't need an accurate one. Because remember, when I was in the chat, all I said was show information. Show information is not a trigger, but the bot is still smart enough to know that, hey, I'm just going to first of all clarify what the information is. And then after that, if the person, I'm going to clarify what the user wants, and then also give the user some suggestions. And that's why it said, hey, to clarify, did you mean R&D learning content? So these triggers that you put in are very important. Go ahead and put in as many as you think. The suggestion over here is put in 5 to 10, but that's basically the point. Now let's go and talk about the authoring piece. The authoring piece is basically your logic of how this bot conversation should flow. Now there's what I always talk about when I'm doing training on Power Virtual Agents. I always say when you're building this logic, there's two types. One is static and the other one is dynamic. Static is you have all the questions that are asked, and those questions have the answers also directly inside your Power Virtual Agents chatbot. And then there is the dynamic one. The dynamic one is this logic that you built, make it a very strong logic, but your content, which you're using to answer, you can keep that in a different data source. And that's what I've done over here. Is now my logic is pretty sound. I'm going in and having the triggers. After that, this conversation starts. In the conversation piece, once I go ahead and, once it's selected the Reza and it says, I want that information, I'm going ahead and saying, all right, I'll get you that information. And for that, we're going to go ahead and leverage Power Automate. And so if I click on Power Automate, I click on this link, it will open up directly this Power Virtual Agents integration with Power Automate. So let's take a look at that. What is going on? First one is the trigger itself is Power Virtual Agents, right? After that, I've gone ahead and initialized the variable. Then I've used this get items. Remember, I just showed you in that Power Virtualized demo that this is one of those powerful functionalities in SharePoint to do a server side. Well, that's exactly what I'm doing over here. In the filter query, I'm saying that so the person in Power Automate has gone ahead and selected a user, right? That user information, I'm getting it from the trigger. And so that user information said, hey, go ahead and take whatever is the user, whether it be Reza or Daniel, as long as the name starts with some of those. Because remember, you can type into the bot saying that the bot might not tell you Daniel, it might just say Dan, and it just works, all right? Because it's to start with. Gets all the information, go ahead and puts in and presents it to you in a very nice and clean fashion. Well, the clean fashion, it takes something called as markdown technique. Markdown technique means you've got to go ahead and put the formatting in a very simple and specific style, and then it presents it. So remember, here is what I have shown this as a markdown technique. But on SharePoint, it went ahead and presented it this way. So that markdown that I showed you, when you actually leverage the bot, it presents it this way. So very simple. I mean, there's a little bit of work involved to make this design look well, but hey, it is worth it because the bot is able to present it in a very nice, clean fashion. And all said and done, that is it. That's your logic over here. But you just realize the beauty of it. We went and did cross-platform integration where we used our virtual agents. SharePoint is the data source, but we also put the intermediate place, which is Power Automate, to go ahead and do all of this. And hey, if that SharePoint list was being used, you could put Power BI over there as well, and it just works, and it works really well over there. So that was the demo piece that I wanted to talk about, Power Virtual Agents.
And time check, we have like 30 seconds to a minute to wrap it up.
Okay, yeah, all said and done from the Power Virtual Agent standpoint, that was the demo. I just quickly want to end with this one last piece, and that was because of an announcement that happened in Ignite. Now, we all know Microsoft Lists. Microsoft Lists is just the one step further directly inside SharePoint List as a backend, but there was an announcement that was made. This caught Reza and my attention big time, because right now as we stand, and we want to go ahead and transfer your Power Automate, Power Apps, you can either use solutions or you can separately move them into another data source. This is going to be huge. From a SharePoint list, you can go ahead and now package everything together, your apps and your flows, and you can migrate that to another different place. It's going to be huge and was announced at Ignite. Finally, we've shown SharePoint for everything, but remember, SharePoint is not a relational database. And so we do want to call that out, is that you want to plan something. If you are interested in it, take a look at Dataverse as an option, because Dataverse is a relational database, and we won't step too much into it. That's a whole separate show altogether. But just keep this in the back of our mind, that SharePoint is not a relational database. Now, Reza and I have done videos on how you can still use SharePoint to do cross-integration, but just thought we'll talk about this just so that you kind of plan accordingly. Other than that, thank you so much for attending our session. Hopefully it gave you a good overview of the deep integration of Power Platform with SharePoint, or vice versa, SharePoint's deep integration with Power Platform, how you want to look at it. Thanks for inviting us over to attend and speak at your event. Any closing comments on your side, Reza?
Oh, I think you've gone the full spectrum. I loved your demos on Power Virtual Agent. I did not know actually you can get a bot in SharePoint in a web part, so that was new to me. Great demo, Dan. And yeah, closing comments is use SharePoint and use the Power Platform together to enhance your experiences. And thank you, D365 champs, for inviting us to come here and present and give us this opportunity. I know we've gone overboard with time, but I'm hoping we gave you an overboard of content as well. So thank you.
Yeah, we have few questions also. So
yeah.
So Reza, it's for you. Can we make to use SharePoint documents in offline mode where they have used Power Apps on that library?
Great question. Can I use SharePoint documents in offline mode if I use Power Apps. So Power Apps can connect to SharePoint, get information for the SharePoint document. Now, offline mode story for Canvas apps is not too intuitive today. There's very limited storage capacity. It depends upon the device. And honestly, documents, the size of the documents will play a big role. So can you do it? I would say maybe, but should you be doing it? I would probably say no. I don't think the story is that great. In fact, Microsoft Lists has an offline story now. If anyone is following that, you can take Lists offline. It uses the OneDrive sync engine. That is different. If you're thinking Power Apps can leverage that today, no. Power Apps has a different architecture, a different base. So as of today, I would say no, but hopefully in future, you never know. The story keeps improving.
And Reza, you wanted to add something about approval timeline?
Yeah, so I saw questions around that approval timeline that I showed. Is it out of the box? No, it's not. But I have done a lot of videos on a wide variety of styles of approvals and timelines, and I put that link in the description of in the chat. I'm sorry, that link is in the chat. It's a link to the SharePoint list formatting experience. It's more of formatting than Power Automate. Power Automate is only updating the columns. It's the magic is in the formatting. So invest time in learning SharePoint list formatting. Dan showed rules. Invest time in those things, because I think you got to use the best of both worlds. Don't try and recreate something in Power Apps if SharePoint can do it, and don't try and build something in Power Apps if SharePoint can do it for you anyways. So you got to think about, you got to have that right balance. Thank you.
So yeah, thanks Dan and Reza for your time and giving your valuable demos. And in a nutshell, each and every demo is an good learning experience. There are a lot of points to take out, and always it is expected from your demos.
Thank you so much.
So yeah, and thank you so much for joining everyone. We really appreciate your presence, and we hope that you are taking away some powerful learnings from this session. And thanks to Dan and Reza for an amazing session on deep integration of Power Platform with SharePoint and sharing their knowledge with us.
Yeah, and just want to call out that the R&D show is not done. We are taking a break for season 1. We are coming back early next year. So I'll see Dan and I will see you. Well, R&D will see you in 2022. So make sure you join us.
Yes, sure. That was been announced in the last show, right, Dan?
Thank you so much.